Hi friends, today we're going to talk more about the commutative property. So I want you to draw an array that shows 5 rows and 3 columns. Pause the video until you're finished. Alright, so here's what your array should look like. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows and 1, 2, 3 columns. Remember, rows go this way, columns go this way. So now we're going to write a multiplication equation to match the array. And our first factor, or our first number, is going to be how many rows. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. And our second factor is going to be the number of columns. 1, 2, 3. So our equation here is 5 times 3. And we're going to wait a second to solve this, but I want to change it slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate my board so I have 2 rows and 5 columns. So I want you to draw an array with 3 rows and 5 columns. Pause the video until you're finished. Alright, so here is my array with 3 rows and 5 columns. 1, 2, 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. All I did was rotate my board from being this way to this way. I did not change the number of circles. So we're going to write a multiplication equation to match this array, and where our first factor is going to be the number of rows. Again, we have 1, 2, 3 rows. So our second factor is going to be the number of columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So here I have an array showing 5 times 3, and here I have an array showing 3 times 5. What is the difference between these two? This one shows 5 times 3, and this one shows 3 times 5. Well, the difference is I just rotated my board, and the rows and columns changed. So let's figure out the answer and make sure that these actually are the same problem. So let's count our rows. We have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So I know that 5 times 3 equals 15. Over here, let's do our group counting. We have 5, 10, 15. So both problems equal 15. 5 times 3 equals 15, and 3 times 5 equals 15. Well, what does our first factor stand for here? What does the 5 represent? Is it the number of rows or the number of columns? You're right, it's the number of rows because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So that 5 stands for rows. What about over here? What does this 3 stand for? Is it rows or columns? Well, here I have 1, 2, 3 rows. So I think it might be rows. So what does the 3 represent in this problem then? Well, I have 1, 2, 3 columns. So I'm just going to write C for columns. And in this problem, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. And again, I'm just going to put a C for columns. So our answers are the same. 5 times 3 equals 15, and 3 times 5 equals 15. But my rows and columns switched because I turned my array a different way. So let's practice another. Here, I want you to draw an array that shows 7 rows and 2 columns. And I want you to pause the video until you're finished. Alright, so here's an array showing 7 rows and 2 columns. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows and 1, 2 columns. So let's write a multiplication equation to match this array. Well, my first factor is going to be the number of rows. And again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows and 1, 2 columns. So here we have 7 times 2. We're going to wait to solve that. Now I want you to change it up a little bit and I want you to rotate your board so you have 2 rows and 7 columns. And your array should look like this. This time I have 1 row, 2 rows, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. So we're going to write a multiplication equation to match this. Our first factor is going to be the number of rows. Well, how many rows do we have? Yes, we have 2 rows and we have 7 columns. So here I have 7 times 2 and here I have 2 times 7. Let's look at how these problems are different. So here again I have 7 times 2 and let's figure out the answer. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. 7 rows and 2 columns gives me 14. Let's look over here. I have 7, 14. So 2 rows of 7 also give me 14. Oops. So what does the first factor stand for over here? In this problem, what does the 7 represent? Is it the number of rows or the number of columns? You're right, it's the number of rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to put an R for row here. And what does the 2 represent on this side? 1, 2. You're right, it's the number of rows. So if the 7 represents the number of rows over here, then the 2 must represent the number of columns. 1 column, 2 columns. And this over here, the 7 represents the number of columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So again, 7 times 2 equals 14, and 2 times 7 equals 14. But my factors are just flipped because I rotated my board to make my rows and columns switch. So let's practice here with our problem set. Here it says, Isaac picks 3 tangerines from his tree every day for 7 days. Use circles to draw an array to represent the tangerines Isaac picks. So he picks 3 tangerines every day for 7 days. I'm going to choose to do rows of 3 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this shows that he picked 3 tangerines on day 1, on day 2, another 3 on day 3, another 3 on day 4, day 5, day 6, and day 7. I'm finished with that problem because it just told me to draw an array. How many tangerines does Isaac pick in 7 days? Write and solve a multiplication sentence to find the total. Well, I know I have 3 rows. I'm sorry, not 3 rows. I have 7 rows times 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. And I have to figure out how much that is. So I'm going to group count by 3s. Count with me. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. So 7 rows of 3 gives me 21. Isaac decides to pick 3 tangerines every day for 3 more days. Draw X's to show the new tangerines. So he decides that he's going to pick 3 tangerines for 3 more days. So instead of X's to show you, I'm just going to use a different color. That way we're not marking over our work. So I'm going to say here's one day that he picks 3 more. Here's another day that he picks 3 more. And here's another day that he picks 3 more. All I had to do there was add those circles. And now I need to write a new multiplication sentence. Well, this time I still have 3 columns, but I have more rows. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows this time, times my 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. And let's figure out how much that equals. So let's just continue counting by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. So now I know that he has a total of 30 tangerines. Great job, guys.